Welcome to a milestone moment on the Snakes and Ladders show with Ronita Sengupta, our 10th episode. This platform is about women elevation, about crushing the snakes that hold women back and building ladders that help them rise. Today's guest has done exactly that, not by following a spotlight, but by creating one for thousands of others. She leads one of Asia's most respected institutions for media and creative education, shaping storytellers, leaders, and change makers of tomorrow. A visionary educationist, institution builder, and a woman who turned purpose into impact. I'm honored to welcome Meghna Ghai Puri, President of Whistling Woods International. Welcome, Meghna, to the Snakes and Ladders show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ronita. Thank you for that introduction. I'm really, really humbled and flattered. Thank you.
Undoubtedly, it's very difficult to express the excitement that I hold in my heart today, because we really wanted to have someone like you talk about your journey, about, your experience. So we are truly honored to have you with us. And we get on to dive into the world of Snakes and Ladders, which I'm sure you'll find very interesting and enticing.
Yes, I think that's the one thing that really excited me about being on this podcast, because Snakes and Ladders is, of course, all our favorite game. But I think, the philosophy of life really is all about snakes and ladders and what you kind of encounter, right? So I think it's really interesting, the name of this podcast. So congratulations for that.
Thank you so much. And we couldn't have agreed more. When I interview powerful and visionary women like you, I think everybody reruns the same story of the snakes that they have crushed, the ladders that they have climbed onto. And I think the journey is so inspiring that our audience here today, would really look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start with the snake segment, Meghna.
Okay, yeah.
And it's been a very, very interesting, enriching journey for you. You have built this institution of Whistling Woods that we are sitting here today into the brand that is today. Okay, so when you stepped into a leadership role at Whistling Woods, what were some of the biggest snakes that you encountered as a young woman building credibility in which I say a male-dominated creative ecosystem?
I think I was very young when I was first brought in by my father to be part of Whistling Woods. It was his dream for many, many years. In fact, it started even before he became a filmmaker. He made a promise to himself that when he one day when he becomes successful in life, he would like to give back to the industry in the way of helping talented individuals from all over the country who don't know how to go about starting their careers in the creative field. And it was always his dream, but I didn't know I was going to be part of it until I was in London and he called me and he said, "You have to come back for this." And even at that point, I didn't really think he was serious, because he's such a filmmaker by heart that I thought, how will he want to start an institution and run like a corporate setup? And I was doing business management at that point. I'd finished my graduation. I was working in London, and that's when I came back. So when I came back, there was nothing. We didn't even have where we were going to build a school, what kind of school. We didn't even have a name, right?
Yes.
But I think over time, we started working together. We started talking to a lot of people and realized that there's so much potential in building something like that in a city like Mumbai, in an industry that is the largest in the world. But we really didn't have any space like this. To answer your question, because I was young and I am a woman, there were challenges. I won't lie. I think being the founder's daughter helped in some ways, because nobody would say it to my face. And I think that was the only difference. But everybody was doing exactly the same thing that they would do to anybody else if they saw a 23-year-old, trying to start something new, do something different. So there were lots of those cases where I found out, and this went on for many, many years. It didn't stop at the beginning. It was even after I started running the school, I found that there was stereotypical kind of views on my leadership style, where because I was really trying to make a difference. I was really trying to be changing the culture of what people had seen over the years in the film and entertainment world. And I think that did, and it did hurt, right? As
I'm
all
sure.
snakes do. The
Yes.
bite does hurt, and there were tears. I had moments where I would break down and say, what am I doing wrong? Those opinions and judgments that you find out about also unfortunately create a lot of self-doubt. So that's a whole spiral that you go through, right? But over the years, this thing was built on 20 this year. I think over the years, the one thing that I've learned is there's no learning without the snakes. So I think I've learned to have a lot of gratitude for all the snakes in my life, because without them, I would not be the person I am today.
That was a very honest take, Meghna, or talking about those snakes that you encountered. And I think when I read about you, okay, and I look at the work that you've done, it kind of really makes me amazed that you belong to one of the most, well-known film family. Of course, everybody knows about Subhash Ghai, who's been the showman of the Indian cinema. But when you're associated with a well-known surname, it can open doors. At the same time, it also leads to a lot of expectations. It creates a lot of expectations. Now, what were the invisible pressures or biases, and this is something that I really want to know a little bit more about, you had to consciously overcome to be seen in your own light as your own leader? So if you can tell us about that.
So I think first of all, it's a huge privilege. Okay, I do not want to run away from the fact that it's a huge privilege to be brought up in a family, where you have so much exposure to the film world. And my father, being at his peak when I was growing up, I had interactions with everybody in the industry. So the goodwill that my father has in the industry was something that I could really use, which is amazing. I don't think everybody gets that opportunity. So I have a lot of gratitude for that. Again, I don't think the snakes really come from within. I think it's from outside. It's from the judgments that that people think that ye kya kar legi, is Shivaji really serious about making a film school? He's a filmmaker. Why would he do something like that? There were a lot of doubts that we faced right at the start. First of all, that he's just doing this for his daughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I was his son, maybe it would have been looked at differently. But because I was his daughter, it's like, हाँ वो बेटी के लिए एक side का कुछ तो करना है ना, उसको busy रखने के लिए. So it was that kind of attitude, and I never wanted it to be that. I think a lot of credit goes to my mom, who herself is a homemaker, who always inculcated in me that I have to have a career. I have to be a successful career woman, despite, without putting any pressure on me in terms of academics. She always had huge aspirations for me. And I think that was my first and biggest ladder that I encountered in my mom, where she really had a lot of faith and belief in me. It was when I turned 15, 16, maybe even started college, when my father started feeling that, okay, because I was an introvert. I very, very shy, as a person, didn't really believe much or thought much of myself, to be honest. I think I was growing up in my father's shadows. And, kids can go two ways. Either they can be overconfident and really outgoing, or they can really take a backseat and say, okay, let dad shine. I'm going to be.
Exactly.
And my mom's like that. She's a very down-to-earth person. She doesn't like the limelight. So both of us would always be away from the limelight. And I think that shaped the person I am. But by the time I left for London, I went to college. That's where I met my husband, my second ladder. I know this is a snake's question, but I'm kind of
that's okay.
Going with the flow of my journey. So, my ladder in terms of finding a person who really helped me believe in myself, who really made me see the values that I had that I myself didn't recognize for a very long time. So he really helped me realize my own potential, and just helping me believe that I am actually worth it all. So I think that helped a lot. And then I think my dad also started then noticing that, okay, she's not just going to be, the shy little girl that I know her as. All dads are very protective of their daughters.
Yes.
So was my dad.
Of course.
And that's when he started, kind of thinking, I guess, of what I could do. I did. He was very open about giving me opportunities. So I had a lot of opportunities to work in the film world. I assisted him in Pardes. And he gave me opportunities to be part of the script writing team, to the film direction team, to the edit team, to the post production, to marketing, distribution. So I actually got the overview of what goes on in a film. But unfortunately, I decided not to do any of that. Eventually I said, I don't think this is for me. And when Whistling Woods came up, it was like honestly the ideal kind of situation for me to kind of come in, be part of something that nobody else had done, and to be able to really show to people that something like this can be created in India. So, in terms of his contribution, it's immense. In terms of the judgment that people had, those were also there. But over time, and I think one thing I did not do is I didn't try very hard. I didn't feel like I needed to try very hard to prove myself. I just kept going. I just kept working hard. I kept staying true to who I was when it came to policy making, when it came to making rules on the campus, when it came to hiring people. I stuck to my intuition. And I think over time, that is what really, kind of showed everyone what I was doing and why I was doing what I was doing.
Wow. And I think that talks beautifully about the journey that you made. You chose your own way of shining in this world. And it brings me to a question, probably a lot of people may have asked this before, that because there were these unexpected pressures, okay, and these expectations there, I'm sure people may have asked you that, Meghna, why don't you go behind the lens, behind the camera, just like your dad did, okay, instead of taking this institution ahead. So have you ever felt, maybe some pressure, silent one, being created in your mind, in your soul, of answering that question to yourself? Or just like you said,
Absolutely
that, you just thought that you didn't want to do this?
Absolutely not. I think as a personality, I wasn't cut out for this industry. And like I said, my mom shaped me a lot. And she was behind the scenes, So my dad's behind the scenes. She was like she's the person, she's the pillar behind him. So I feel for me, my entire personality was not suited. And I tried. It's not like I didn't try. And I had a lot of fun. I have to say, I learned a lot. The amount you can learn on a film set is incredible. So I think that I honestly suggest, and I was talking to some CBSE principals the other day, and I was telling them how even if your students want to become CEOs tomorrow, they must learn how to make films. Because what you learn on a film set in terms of collaboration, in terms of teamwork, in terms of leadership, people management, that all comes handy eventually in life when you are running a company.
Wonderful. I think that's a great take on a lot of other qualities that, we try to teach the younger generation, and how they're going to be moving towards aspiring professions, etc. But that brings me, Meghna, to my next question. And I want to really ask this because you're somebody who's a subject matter expert working in this industry, that creative industries are often glamorized. But, there is also a deeply insecure feeling or, emotion that goes underneath. Now, what are the hardest truths of, women leaders that, let's say they must face in media, film, and maybe education? Like we do see a lot of other industries. I know that so many people have commented about the corporate world. But when I look at this side of the line, would really want to know from you.
So I think problems that women face are similar everywhere, right? In terms of hitting the glass ceiling, in terms of not being able to get back to their work after they've, had children and they want to start working again. But I think in our industry, especially when you're facing the camera, there is a lot of insecurities in terms of the way you look, in terms of aging, there's discrimination, not just that you're, a woman who has other responsibilities. Because think about it, when you're on a film set, you can't follow timings. You have to be there all the time, which is why we have role models like Farah Khan, who took her triplets on the set and made a whole film. But it's really hard. She could do that because she was the main film director and she could demand that of a producer. But I think as young assistant directors, for example, or somebody who's just starting out, it's really difficult to find that balance.
True.
So, and women have so many responsibilities, whether it's aging parents, whether it's young kids or siblings, and I think that is where we face the biggest challenge. And the challenge is really something that is, of course, societal driven. I feel like if men were to also take equal responsibility, this wouldn't happen. So a girl could go and make a film if her husband would take care of the kids at home and be there full time.
Yeah.
If he took a break from his work. But very rarely do you see that, right?
Yeah.
So I think until that equality happens, where men and women learn to have a life work balance, women will always face some sort of kind of discrimination there, where they are not able to reach their highest potential like men do, because of all the other issues that they face. So I feel it'll take time. We are getting there. I have faith in women like us who are bringing up boys and sons who we are inculcating those values of equality and leadership.
I completely agree with you, because I think one of the hardest reality of any industry today is that women, even when they become successful and they have potential to really reach the top, are seen quitting, because they are expected to play the role primarily of the nurturer in the family. And I do believe, with that statement that you mentioned, that we wish men would take up some more responsibility of the household. And I really hope that, we'll see a time where the share of labor is equal amongst both the genders.
I still think we'll be better at nurturing for sure.
Yeah.
that's our, but we could do with some help.
Yeah, exactly. And I think elevation is all about that, where men are elevating women, women elevating men. I think that's the ecosystem that we want to build. Now, Meghna, women, and I think you will agree with me, we just carry a lot of emotional labor silently, many times, in different phases of our life. I'm sure you've not been an exception, okay? None of us have been. How did you manage maybe the burnt out syndrome, the self-doubt, or the fear of letting people down while leading at a large scale, an institution like this?
So I encountered about 15 years ago, I encountered spirituality in my life. So not religion, but a philosophy and a practice that really empowered me to be the person I am today. And the change, like even my parents who are so close to me, or my husband, or even my kids, the change that they've seen in me in the last 15 years is a testament of that. So I practice Buddhism. I'm part of the Soka Gakkai, and we are a community of Buddhist members who are really practicing what the Buddha taught, but in this real world. Yeah.
Okay.
In this, so no mud, no lotus. So how do you bloom like a lotus flower in this society where there's so much pressure, there's so much self-doubt, judgment, all of that, right? And I think the practice has really shaped the person I am today. So if it's, that I'm a little bit more confident than I was, if I am a better human being than I was 15 years ago, or just being able to, take decisions in my work with wisdom and clarity, all of that I honestly kind of dedicate to this practice, because I feel this, and it's not a practice that, somebody else tells you what to do. It's about me and how I worked on myself using the principles of Buddhism. And so I feel that and I think a lot of, like when I was young, I felt like, why do we need spirituality? That's for older people. Once you're retired, then you go into this.
Yes.
But I encourage my children, even though they're much younger. In fact, since I started, they started. So they were little toddlers when they were doing it. But I think it's important, especially today, with the kind of, pressures teenagers face, with the social media and with the gaze that they have on them all the time. It's important for them to be able to navigate life, face challenges, and use snakes as ladders and as opportunities to become better human beings. So I feel it's very, very important. And I encourage all young people to seek, some form of spiritual philosophy practice, because it's important at this point in their life to know it. Like, I wish I had this much earlier. I think I would have done so many things differently, right?
Correct.
So I feel that clarity is very important, and that's really helped me. And it is something that I'm very disciplined about. I spend a lot of time on it. But because I know that, my 24-hour day just expands into, I can do so much more, right? And I can do it all with joy in my heart. And then I think that's what we want, right? We all are seeking happiness. And that happiness really comes from us being strong, and facing each situation with a lot of courage. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's how I've dealt with my
That's very nicely, penned down by you in your words. And I think resorting or, even practicing spirituality to certain extent have helped people out. And I
Yeah.
think the teachings, the learnings that you're talking about are extremely pertinent in today's world.
Absolutely.
It's something that, we must leave to our children so
Yeah.
that, they can hold on to it and build the legacy that we're looking at.
True.
Wonderful. Meghna, so couple of things that comes to my mind. Have you ever had, this uh, intent or maybe, that kind of force of proving yourself as a superwoman, okay? Or, you've been just happy being a trailblazer, a hustler and Meghna Ghai Puri in your own light. What has been like?
So I think my life has been very organic. Like I said to you, that when I started, I was really not the person I am today. I didn't have any ambitions of my own. My only and this might sound really cheesy, but I'm really honestly, the only thing I wanted was my parents to be proud of me. I wanted my parents to, to see that, yes, we're happy that, what she's come up with. And I didn't even know what I was going to do. So a lot of the credit goes to my parents because they shaped and guided me as to what I should be doing in life. And now that I look back, I think of Whistling Woods and I can't think of anything else I would have done, right? Because it's helped me use the goodwill that my father's created in the industry over the years and pass it on to the next generation who really is so grateful to us. And that is such a fulfilling feeling. Every time I meet an alumna of ours, or we see their name on the big screen, it is so gratifying that what we work towards, it's paying off. It's paying off in such beautiful ways. So I think that this is something that was perfectly made for me, and I feel the universe had a huge role to play in that as well. So I really do consider myself very fortunate.
Wow, wonderful. That brings me to the last question of the snake segment. And looking back, was there a moment, when, let's say, a setback nearly became a stopper for you? And what did that snake teach you?
So I think the biggest, biggest or the toughest time that we as an educational institution, and all of us, my father, myself, my husband, because we work together, have faced is when in 2012 we were asked to shut down our institute.
Oh my God.
And it was a huge battle, a court battle, and the government was involved. And I think that really broke me. And that is when actually I started practicing Buddhism as well. But that really broke me. I was very, I felt like what is the point of doing all this, and then having the risk of losing it all. Yeah. So I think that was one of my lowest points. I think in 2 years, until we got the stay finally in 2014 to continue our institution, I must have aged 20 years. But again, every crisis brings an opportunity. So I think if I didn't have that crisis, I would have not been introduced to Buddhism. I would have not started practicing. And I think those 2 years was so value creating for the institute. We started our first MBA at Whistling Woods. We started, I was given a fellowship, in the UK, which was again such a surprise. So many benefits, but I think it's a lot about how we look at life. Yeah. And our conduct towards a situation or a problem, which can really change that crisis into an opportunity. So I feel that definitely was the worst time that all of us faced.
Okay.
And I'm grateful to every staff, every faculty, every parent, every student who stood by us in those days. And there were we still have so many of them working with us still. And they went through those really tough 2 years where we didn't know whether we were going to survive. We didn't know how we didn't have money to in fact pay salaries or electricity bills, because we were in such a, the case was taking over all the finances. We anyway weren't established at that point. It was just about 5 or 6 years into the school starting. So we were not really making profits at all, not even breaking even. Yeah. So it was such a difficult time from all ends. But again, I think it taught me how, there are people in the world, there are good people in the world who will stay loyal to you no matter what. It taught me that all those people in the industry who were initially not sure about what we were doing, what Whistling was all about, they all came to support us. Yeah. At that point, they found out about what Whistling Woods was. They they really made an effort to come and get to know what we were doing, and then they went out and spoke for us. So I think the kind of support we got from the industry, we always started Whistling Woods as an industry school, but I think after 2012, we really truly became an industry school because of this crisis. So I'm eternally grateful for it, because we really wouldn't be challenging ourselves the way we do today if it wasn't for that.
And today, you guys are one of the biggest in Asia. So, heartiest congratulations for that.
Thank you.
It's a long way that you have come, and
Yeah.
you've made this institution, as I said earlier, the brand that it is today. So this was a very insightful Snakes segment with you, Meghna.
Yeah.
And time to move on
Okay,
to
to
something
more fun stuff.
more motivating, but
Yeah.
we'll definitely talk about the ladder segments and who are your allies in this journey.
Thank you.
So, Meghna, coming to the ladder segment, I have a set of, very interesting questions. And again, something that will dive deep into your journey. We really want to know who were your allies, what motivated you, and what were the ladders that you could climb. So, my first question in this segment is that what personal values became your strongest ladders in shaping the Whistling Woods, Institute into a globally respected institution?
So I think, your parents, of course, play such a huge role, right, in shaping your values and the person that you are. And like I mentioned earlier, my mom has taught me about being a humble person, being a kind person, being a compassionate person. And, I use those qualities, as a leader. And then my dad's taught me so much about having courage, to do what you really want to do, and to have devotion for your work. I think passion as a word is used very loosely. I feel devotion is what's important. Even for the younger generation who's looking to follow their dreams, they need to be devoted to their work. And my father is really, even today, he's a workaholic, and the way he puts in his heart, mind, soul, everything into his work. So I learned how to be devoted to your work from him. I learned how to be resilient from him. How to really know that there are going to be challenges in life, but you have to just keep rising. You have to keep, seeing them as they come and keep doing what is right. Integrity, I think that is a huge thing. Quality I learned from my husband, because he's a very sincere person, and he's always told, he's always looked upon by everyone as well as a person who's very truthful, right? And he is who he is, so he's very true to himself. So I think these are all the values that my family brought to me as I was growing up. Since I include my husband, because I was really a very young kid. I was 18 when I met him, so that's why I think these are the things that really have shaped me, and these are qualities that I imbibed in myself, and they became me. So when they became me, and when I decided that I'm going to be true to myself, I'm not going to be somebody else. And yes, as a young girl coming into a career like that, you do want validation. You do seek for people's, people telling you that you're doing a great job. Over time, though, you learn that you don't need that validation.
Yes.
You don't need to really wait for people to say that to you. You understand from all the snakes that you've bitten by and all the ladders that you've crossed that you need to believe. So I think the strongest ally you can have is yourself, right? In terms of knowing that I have the potential to do what I expect of myself and what I want to become, and how I want to shape the institution that I am a leader of. So I feel that a lot of that comes from your own self first. And then, of course, you take everything that you've drawn from as a child, as a teenager, as a grown woman, and you use that in your daily life.
So we spoke about the legacy that you're carrying, and it is definitely not easy, Meghna, because you're carrying so many qualities, that you've learned from your parents, from your own work experience. So I'm going to get into a little bit more about the multidisciplinary stuff that you've done, because I see that has shaped up your leadership style. So you've worked across marketing, distribution, education, and institution building. Now, when you look at this multidisciplinary exposure, How has it helped you in terms of becoming a ladder for sharper leadership style?
So, I think that you can't be a good leader unless you've gone through everything yourself, unless you've done you've gone through the grueling process of being an intern, or being at the lowest level of every department. And that's something I did. I mean, right out of college, I was working at a startup in London where we did everything. Like I did everything from dispatch to, making presentations, to updating the website, to, figuring out content for the website, everything, right? So when you work in a startup, great way to learn that.
True.
When I came back to Bombay, my father did not give me one big office, with one big table and chair and said, Abhi, he basically put me everywhere. And he said, Abhi, sikho, like you learn. And I was never treated as, chairman's daughter has arrived. I worked with every department as an intern so that I could learn. And I think that has helped me a lot in having more empathy for people who work for me, who I work with, so that I understand what it is that marketing struggles with. What is it that, PR is all about? I think if you know, then you can definitely be more empathetic and you can understand the struggles of, your colleagues who you work with. So, so I feel it's very important. And like I said, filmmaking, a film set can teach you all of that. So I think my experience at Pardesh taught me everything, all those skills that I needed. But having the knowledge of film distribution, marketing, finance as well, business, HR, that has helped me a lot, not just for myself, but also in shaping leaders at Whistling Woods, from really encouraging them and empowering them to become better leaders.
And this is such a welcome change from a lot of people I have seen, especially in the corporate world, where let's say the father is in a very senior leadership position, or could be the owner or a founder, or maybe at a managing director level also. But as soon as their children enters the office, they are allotted a cabin. They are kind of not even given official employment letters, and they're asked to maybe lead a team of interns when they should be doing the internship themselves.
Right,
but I think it's heartening to know that you went through all the drill, because that's what's made you the
it's
person
all
today.
my father. In fact, I've shared this experience before in interviews, but my first kind of education to how things were going to be for the rest of my life was when I was working as an assistant director. Actually, I was an intern.
Okay.
Maybe the third AD, like final, the lowest rung. And I was on the direction team, and we had a shoot that morning, and my mom said that my dad was going to leave early, of course, because the shoot timing was, the shift was at 9. And my mom said, "Thoda ruk ja, just take your papa's dabba and go." So I walked in with the dabba at 11 o'clock, thinking I'm being such a good daughter. And I remember my father blasted me in front of the entire set.
Okay.
And he said, "Who do you think you are?" He said, you can't walk in. When a director comes in at 9 o'clock, you're supposed to be at 6:30. So don't think you are who you are. You are here as an intern.
Wow.
And I remember going, because I was also doing costumes, so I used to have to go and meet Mahima all the time. And I remember going to her and crying. And she's like, "I know your dad shouts a lot." And both of us were crying to each other. But, and I felt really humiliated that day. I felt like, why did he have to do it in front of everyone? Yeah. Why did he have to shout it? But honestly, like I said, he's such a devoted worker, like devoted filmmaker, that he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He's not going to think of all of these things. And that was my most valuable lesson that I've learned, because being on time, not thinking who you are because of who you're related to.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that really shaped the person I became, even at Whistling Woods. Even though I was the first employee here, right? Like I was one of the first people to start working here. I know everything about this institution from when it was like day zero. But despite that, I feel like I've been conducting myself in a way that I work with people rather than, they work for me. And that was one lesson. That incident really taught me a lot. So.
I think very tough workplace ethics.
Oh my God,
your dad has, taken you through and taught you. But yeah, I think there are values which, when our parents teach us, we kind of learn it, and
absolutely.
Later on we see, how it's kind of paying dividends.
Yes.
Talking about education, Meghna, because you did mention about it, we all know that it can be a very powerful ladder for women. Now, how did the idea of scholarships, because I know that Whistling Woods definitely as an institution gives out scholarship to meritorious students, how did that, then rural women empowerment and also inclusive access become central to your leadership philosophy?
So I think again, it comes from the kind of person you are. So the fact that when I started researching about Whistling Woods and I started looking at everything, I realized that talent can come from anywhere, right? It doesn't have to come from a certain strata of society. It needs to be honed, it needs to be nurtured, and everybody doesn't have the resources to go through that. So it was, in fact, even though we were completely privately funded, we had a huge loan to start this institute. Um, we had to first look at breaking even because it's a private institute without any government grants. We needed to break even. It was my dream right from the start that I want Whistling Woods to become a place where I'd never have to reject a student because they can't pay the fee. I know we have a long way to go still. It's something that an institution like Harvard would do because they have so much in terms of the funding that they get. But I feel that is definitely something that I wanted. And again, if you want something bad enough, you work towards it, and you
Yes.
then make policy in that way and you try to inculcate it. And so for scholarships, again, it was always that even though we were not making money, we were a loss making company, we never ever shied away from giving scholarships. We were like, no, meritorious students definitely, and then we extended it to students who really really were underprivileged, kids who came from NGOs. And there's a proper process that we go through in terms of screening, but really understanding how talented they are, as well as how dedicated they will be towards this, because it's not easy to sustain a career here without any resources. So we give them almost 100% scholarships so that they don't have anything to worry about when they're studying here. And to our surprise, it's been an amazing scholarship program. We've had students do so well for themselves in the industry, despite the very challenging circumstances they've come from. Maybe even, in spite of those, because I feel that's what shapes a good filmmaker, right? The experiences, the life experiences you go through. So, yes, for me, it's always very important to be able to have that kind of approach to our students, where they are not just coming from certain backgrounds. Talent is always appreciated and encouraged to come forth. So that is where it came from. But yeah, we've only extended ourselves more and more and more over the years, and I'm really happy that I got the support to run the scholarship program the way I wanted.
That's an eye opener, definitely, especially for the audience who's listening to us. And I'm sure a lot of young girls, and women, or I would say students, who would probably want to make a foray into this area. I'm sure that, they may definitely want to come and apply in Whistling Woods.
I hope so. I really do. I think that talent is
yes,
all over in our country. There is abundance of talent, and storytelling is, again, India's known for that. So I think that if we can, have more and more worthy students who really, and a lot of it depends also on parents, because parents themselves don't think that is industry mein padhai ki zarurat hai, or why do you want to enter this industry?
Yes.
Do something more conventional. But I really believe that if your child is talented, if you allow them to do what they love, they will never find that kind of happiness anywhere else.
Yeah. And
they'll always have regrets.
It's important to talk about things that are unconventional. It's important to talk about professions that definitely may have an unconventional twist, but it can take you to the next level, because it teaches you leadership, it teaches you team building, it teaches you, even a sense of business in a very different way. So I completely agree with you on that. Now, Meghna, my next question would definitely be about your perspective when you're looking at, the next generation of women leaders in the creative business field or the creative industry. What ladders must institutions urgently build for them? They were not there during your time, but when you look at today's world, what do you think should be done?
I think for sure there has to be a more equal policy, in terms of men and women. There has to be equity of pay. There has to be equity um, of opportunities. Yeah, we have to completely stop looking at women with that scared filter. Ki, Arey, abhi she'll get pregnant. Arey, abhi she'll have children, then she'll stop coming. Oh, she's gonna have problems because she has a family to look after at home.
Yeah.
We have to stop that, and I think that will only happen if more and more organizations allow men to have that flexibility as well, right? And I agree that many times men don't want that flexibility. They would so rather just be at work all the time and not go back home and look at that. But I feel eventually, and today in 2026, I think we can expect that. We can expect that both men and women need to have that work and life balance. Both of them need to be able to, and women need to be given those opportunities.
Correct.
That we look at, generally, traditionally giving it to men.
Wow, that's wonderful. And if I have to ask you a little bit more about, leadership, what role do you think empathy plays in leadership, especially in nurturing creative talent? So, I feel sometimes qualities like empathy, kindness, it's very undervalued, in any profession that you look around. But I definitely want your take on this, Meghna.
So I think it's the most undervalued, kind of trait in a leader. I feel an organization can be profitable. In fact, I would take it another step further. I think you can make more profits, if you have a very, very conducive environment for your people to work with. Because I feel people can't leave their homes, spend most of their day at your workplace. If they don't have a sense of ownership, they will never give it you 100%.
Correct.
Yeah, it becomes a 9-to-5 job. But when they have that sense of ownership, they work, they extend themselves, overextend themselves. And I have seen this, myself, where I have felt like taking that Saturday or Sunday off, and I've seen my colleagues working all weekend. I'm sure they begrudge me for not being around, but I see that they are loving it and they're doing it because they have that sense of responsibility for the organization, which I think is what is the culture that I wanted to
build. Of course.
It's not that I not work weekends. It's not that I'm not, I've done all of that, right, in the first 10, 15 years of this institute building. But I feel like that is the organization that I've built now, where everybody feels a sense of ownership.
Correct.
So I feel sometimes that, oh wow, I have this team of people that I'm working with who are thinking of Whistling Woods before even I can think of Whistling Woods. So that only comes with empathy, right? That only comes with you being really, really compassionate as a leader, being kind as a leader, understanding their problems. I was on a panel very early on when I first started, and I think a lot of these really helped, reading books by women leaders, being on panels with other women leaders. And I remember one of the women on that panel mentioning this. She said that, women, if you are good to them, when they're starting out in your organization, they will be the most loyal to you.
Correct.
Throughout. And they will give you more, they'll be more productive, because they really value that. Men may kind of feel like, maybe, okay, she was kind to me, but I have to, I've got a job which is paying me more, so I'm going to leave, or I have a better career opportunity. But women will always be more loyal to you.
Yeah.
And I think as an institution, we need that. Whereas in corporates, it's very common to have a high turnover. In institutions, you need institutional memory. You need people who really belong, who will give the students that sense of stability, so that when students come back after even 10 years, they see familiar faces around them, right? So I think that empathy and kindness are completely underrated. All leaders need to exercise that, because that's the only way they are going to actually see a rise in their profits. I can say that with full confidence.
I'm sure a lot of people are going to be hearing this, and I think, yes, that's the quality that we also must learn to inculcate. But I also feel that's what leadership inspires, because today, if your team is willing and happy to even work during, weekends to deliver certain results, I think that's also where, you have earned that, that kind of loyalty, that kind of willingness, going beyond the call of duty. So that's exemplary, Meghna. Coming to now to the closing reflections before we end the ladder segment and we move to the fun segment, the real Snakes and Ladders game that we're going to play with you today. Of course, you must have seen it, but we are going to play it today with you. But I really want to know that when you, when you sit back and if you're looking at a young woman watching this show, but is standing at the bottom of a long ladder. So this girl is talented, ambitious, but unsure. What would you tell her to help her rise despite the snakes that are hovering around?
So something that I learned when I wasn't so young, but I learned through life, and I'd love for young women, and I think everybody has their own journey. So me telling them may not help, but if it does, great. I think young women need to learn to believe in themselves. The first thing that you need to do is really believe in your own potential, and that is not easy to do. Especially like you said, when there are so many people hovering around telling you, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. But that ladder will take you to that happy place that you've always dreamt of if you stay true to yourself. If you get rid of all self-doubt, you are able to understand that hard work is the only way, right? No other way will take you up that ladder. I think a lot of the generation that we see now is looking at escalators and elevators and they're not looking at climbing those ladders. Yeah. But honestly, in life, you will have to work hard, be persistent with your dreams, yeah, and work towards them persistently. Be resilient. Do not give up when that one setback happens, or two happen, or 10 happen. Giving up is not an option. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that is something that you will need to build yourself, and which is why I think that having a strong spiritual sense will help you do that, because you will connect with yourself better.
Wonderful. I believe that all of us who are going to be watching this show today will resonate with you. But it's been such an interesting, such an insightful and enriching journey, Meghna, that you spoke about. So with all